are now the defenders of the stronghold of democracy and of equal opportunity.
You and I, as citizens, have the obligation to shape the debates of our time, not only with the votes we cast, but with the voices we lift.
The people are looking for honest answers, not easy answers.
The very word secrecy is repugnant.
Clear leadership.
And we are, as a people,
not false claims and evasiveness and politics as usual.
Opposed to secret societies.
As a people, we cannot afford to let any group of citizens or any individual citizen live or labor under conditions which are injurious to the commonwealth.
Black, white, Latino, Asian, Native American, young, old, gay, straight, men, women, folks with disabilities, all pledging allegiance under the same proud flag to this big, bold country that we love. That's what I see. That's the America I know.
Not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
There is nothing wrong with America that cannot be cured by what is right with America.
Welcome to the Aggressive Progressive Podcast. I am your host, Chris Hahn. I'm at Christopher Hahn on X, Christopher Hahn, NY on Instagram, and ChristopherHahn.com. Those are my socials. Look, the only, when politicians start calling themselves a savior, you might want to check into what they're up to. Let's talk about it. Happy President's Day. You're hearing this on President's Day. Some of you may be watching this on a different day, but it's being released on President's Day. So happy President's Day. Happy President's Week. I mean, it's become a week, right? Because our kids are off from school and they travel and do other things. Here's a word that I don't like being associated with presidents. Savior. Now, again, I am not going to chase my tail over Donald Trump's latest outrage where he posted on Truth Social something to the effect that those trying to save America are not above the law or not breaking any laws, could not be breaking any laws. People who have a savior complex do not have any regard for anybody else's rules. They think, I am the savior, I am hearing from God, and I will do as I please. And I am not suggesting that Donald Trump thinks he's hearing from God. He does think he was called by God. He thinks he was saved by God. I'm telling you right now, he wasn't. I worry about the use of the word savior. And I think that everybody who cares about our Constitution, cares about our country, should also be concerned about the word savior. Savior is a word that is outside the norms of our country, especially being used by the president themselves. Some presidents in the past have been called, the savior of this, the savior of that, in hindsight, or by others. But Donald Trump is using the word savior to describe himself. And it just made me think, when I first saw that tweet, the first person I thought of was David Koresh. And maybe I'm aging myself a little bit, but David Koresh was a cult leader in the 1990s who was sexually abusing children and who was who the federal government was seeking to enter the compound to do wellness checks and to arrest him and some of his followers for some of the abuses that they've done. And David Koresh, rather than face justice, rather than be held accountable to law and order, burned his compound to the ground, burned it to the ground with the people in it. Now, I'm not suggesting today, because again, I've got a rule. I'm trying not to chase my tail. I want to see what happens first. I mean, his savior law and order comment conflicts with the comment he made last week where, of course, I'll follow court orders, court rules, court rulings. He said that. I think some people in his base didn't like that he said that, right? But, it makes me think of Koresh, right? Because Donald Trump ran for president And in large part, the motivation that drove him was avoiding consequences for actions he's taken, not just as president 4 years ago, but in his personal and business dealings. He wanted to avoid consequences. Now, I have made this very clear. I don't think he was ever going to face jail from any of these things. But he thought he might, and he wanted to avoid those consequences. So he ran. It was a powerful, motivating factor. And now it appears that he's willing to burn a lot of what we have to the ground, right? He's tearing up agencies. He's tearing up departments. And again, not a hill to die on in a lot of ways, but the services that these agencies provide are critical. For example, last week, DOJ wanted to cut out all of the nuclear regulators who safeguard our nuclear arsenal. They didn't know what they were doing. Once they realized what they were doing, they took back that, layoff notice to those people. But it was typical, right? I mean, that was a very blatant example of how they don't know what they're doing and there are going to be consequences to their actions. Fortunately for them, they were informed immediately about the consequences of those actions and they took them back. And as I've said before, this is how Elon Musk dealt with Twitter, or now X. He cut everybody out. Some people were critical. He brought them back or brought people back in those positions. A little harder to do when you fire the nuclear regulators who are keeping our nuclear weapons safeguarded and safeguarding us around the world in the same capacity. And what they're doing on foreign policy right now is despicable with Ukraine. I'll talk about that another day. I am your host, Chris Hahn. I'm at Christopher Hahn on X, Christopher Hahn NY on Instagram, and ChristopherHahn.com. Those are my socials. Make sure you are following me on YouTube at The Aggressive Progressive on YouTube, and you could download the audio version of the Aggressive Progressive podcast wherever you get your podcasts. So I'm going to take another moment of personal privilege, right? I did it last week with the Golden Retrievers at the American Kennel Club. Got a lot of feedback on that. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to take another moment of personal privilege to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Saturday Night Live. The special happened on Sunday. Well, let me just start by saying when I was a kid, it was my dream to be on Saturday Night Live. I used to watch it with my dad. My parents were divorced. And on the weekends, I would go spend time with my dad, and I would sleep over my dad's house, and he would let me watch Saturday Night Live on Saturday night with him. So we would stay up and we would watch Saturday Night Live, and it was like 1980, 81. I was a little kid. And I have very fond memories of it. Joe Piscopo, Eddie Murphy. I got to know Joe Piscopo when I worked at WABC radio in New York. And that was kind of fun. I mean, we disagreed politically, but he was a hell of a guy, is a hell of a guy. And it was kind of cool because I just remember those sketches with him and Eddie Murphy, and they were just tremendous. When I was working my way through college, I was doing stand-up comedy and sketch comedy. I was doing stand-up comedy in the summers and then on the weekends. And I always point to this like moment in time. My senior year, going into my senior year of college at Albany, I ran for student body president and I won. And that led me to a lot of connections that pretty much propelled me into the career I have now. And I basically gave up doing stand-up. I would do stand-up at clubs. I worked at some clubs here on Long Island, and I worked at some clubs in the city. And I was just really banging away at it. I was even making some money doing it. Not a lot, but I was making a little bit. And when you're a kid and you're making a little bit of money doing something, it becomes fun. I also wound up parlaying that into jobs, emceeing corporate picnics, which actually sustained me through college and law school. And even my early days working for Chuck Schumer, I would still pick up a gig on the weekend to make extra money, doing emceeing a picnic here and there. And it was very, very helpful to me until I left government service. But I always think about that moment that I decided that, now politics is going to be my life. because I was always interested in politics, even when I was in high school. But I was always interested in comedy. They were my like two loves. I've tried to combine them in my radio and television career. But it is I still love doing Red Eye on Fox News just for that point, right? Was two politicos and two comedians on the panel, and it was a fun show to do. It had a cult following, and I miss it. If I think of all the shows I miss doing at Fox, that's the one I miss the most. And I've pitched trying to, get that show back at other places, and I haven't been successful doing it. But Red Eye on Fox News, I mean, you can find clips of me on Red Eye on Fox News. I'm having a blast, with the comedians, even when the comedians disagree with me. It's just fun. I've also defended comedy. I'm not one of those progressives who think that, we should be canceling comedians because something they say on stage may be offensive, even if I am offended by it. And a lot of times I am. But I think comedians need to be given a wide berth. They need to be the mirror that we hold up to ourselves, right? To really put in perspective what some of our political figures are doing. And I think that's been the case in this country, for a long time, right? I mean, since the 1950s, at the very least, it has been early 1960s. It has been, comedy has been a barometer on what's going on socially and politically in the United States of America. So Saturday Night Live, though, to me is perhaps one of my greatest influences. Saturday Night Live and Howard Stern are two of my greatest influences as far as politics and media. And maybe I sound a little nervous even having this conversation, just thinking about the audience. I've gotten to meet a lot of people from Saturday Night Live. I met Lorne Michaels a few times at Yankee games. And I've always told him every time I've met him that, we love what he's done for us in this country. And I am concerned that this is the 50th season. And he had said a couple of years ago he wants to get through the 50th and then see where it goes. He's turning 80, I believe, this year. It looks great. But, when you turn 80, you're going to do this show forever. I don't know what comes next. I don't know who takes it over and keeps it going, right? There's a certain, stature that Lorne Michaels has in the business that it's going to be very hard for anybody else to gain, at least immediately. And I don't know if the stature just goes with the role. I mean, sometimes stature goes with the role. You get elected to be a member of Congress, regardless what you were before. You now have the stature of a member of Congress. And that's what's great about being a member of Congress or a member of the Senate. Does the stature that Lorne Michaels holds pass to the next executive producer of Saturday Night Live? I don't know. I just don't know because, it took 50 years for that, for Lorne Michaels to become the legend that he is today. So what's it going to take? I mean, you're not going to put another legend in there. Does Tina Fey or Seth Meyers take it over and start producing it? I don't know what happens, and I hope it doesn't end, right? Because, my daughter and I enjoy watching it together, and I hope that she can watch it with her kids someday because it's a lot of fun. Even when it's bad, in my opinion, it's good. Some things that they do probably don't hit home with everybody. Some things do. And as I always say, when I'm doing this stuff, you do 5 of these a week. They can't all be gems. Some of them are going to stink. But thank you for sticking with me. All right. I'm going to remind you now, as I always do, to seek the truth, to question everyone and everything, even me. Seek the truth. I know it's out there, and I know you'll find it if you look for it. And I'll be back here again real soon to tell you the truth as I see it. I'm Chris Hahn. Thanks for joining me on the Aggressive Progressive Podcast.